Hello, and welcome back to the All Out Soccer podcast for a super U.S. men's national team related episode straight out of optimism not seen since 2010. Myself, Jeremy Goldstein, my co host, Joseph McBride, we're two football fans talking about soccer. In general, we focus on a fusion of the MLS, the U.S. men's and women's soccer teams, and the build up to the 2026 World Cup. This week, you know what we're talking about. Okay. My vignette, Joe. The narrative of our conversation would have just been so different had we recorded on Tuesday like we usually do. The team looked cooked against Korea, then did the cooking against Japan. I didn't think the difference in quality was too different in the two games, but the goals were, and that was all the difference. There were 2-0 losers in the first against Korea over the weekend, and then 2-0 winners in the second against Japan on Tuesday night. What does this mean? Does this mean anything? We're going to start with the games. We're going to talk about Poch in versus Poch out, specifics of the team selection, and then look ahead to future fixtures with a little bit of Luis Suarez suspension conversation sprinkled in. At the end, we're going to include a brief portion of Joe's interview with former U.S. men's national team and Tottenham goalkeeper Brad Friedel. He talks about Pochettino, his reaction to the team's performance last night, and other U.S.-related bits and bobs. Okay. 2-0 against Japan, Joe. 2-0 against Japan. Wasn't a Japanese team starting all of their top-level players, but there's still a slew of players from across the best teams in Europe. Well, not always the best teams in Europe, but secondary teams. The U.S. came out in a new 3-4-3 formation. The first goal was Maxi Arfston to Alejandro Zendejas on a beautiful finish off of a beautiful cross. The second goal in the second half was a Christian Pulisic carry on the left wing, and he found striker for it, Florolin Balogun. Say that 10 times fast. Pulisic looked super influential all night. He was at his best in the left wing. We're going to talk about this game a lot, but first reaction, I got home, turned it on. I was like, oh, the U.S. looks sprightly. I'm like, wait, they're winning? What was your first reaction?
I just thought the first reaction was just, I know that you said that they didn't, the class wasn't much different to the Korea game, but just the entire vibe was completely different. It just seemed more direct. Pulisic was amazing, I thought, yesterday. And the difference is when he plays well, the whole team is elevated with him, which is so key. And, he's had a lot on his plate, as I'm sure that everyone knows. And we've discussed in depth in terms of his Gold Cup withdrawal, etc. But it was a really, really big performance. I thought everyone carried themselves well. I was really impressed with Max Arfston as a left wing back who, he's probably not going to play ahead of Anthony Robinson when he's fit, but having that pressure behind him and that competition for places is really, really, really strong. I loved the 3-back. The ball to Zendejas. I give a lot of MLS players stick for the lack of crossing. I say that in the league, it's not really too clinical in terms of crosses. I see a lot of failed ones, but that floated ball was amazing. And for Zendejas to take that first time along the floor, the keeper has to get down low. Such a beautiful finish. And Balogun's as well. He had a few chances that he should have scored before he scored. Yep. Obviously, a late call up to the squad with Josh Sargent looking on the bench, waiting for his chance. But when he did score, he took his chance really well. It was a beautiful finish, tucked in near post, far post, off the post and in. Really, really nice. And I thought there was a key moment in that. The sideline interviewer said they spoke with him before the game, and he said, I will fight for this place. So the race is really hotting up. There was a lot to be happy about. And, Japan weren't at their best. They didn't have their best squad out for sure, but neither did the US. There's been some big omissions. I mean, the midfield for one of them, Christian Roldan, partnering Tyler Adams. And Tyler Adams, I think, is a lock starter for the World Cup. I think he's a fantastic player, really controls the midfield. Roldan, not so much, but, you throw a Musa or a McKennie or a Johnny Cardozo in there, and it's looking really good. And yeah, this podcast would have made a lot different if we recorded it earlier.
Yeah, I had a visceral reaction to seeing Christian Roldan in the lineup. I remember when the U.S. were trying to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, which looked like surefire for most of that qualifying run until the end. And Christian Roldan was arguably the face of MLS stagnation in that squad. And to see him again in 2025, if you had told me as a teenager back then and now as like someone actively preparing for the 2026 World Cup, Christian Roldan is starting in a pre-World Cup hosting friendly, I would have been disgusted. And I was disgusted. And I was right. I don't think he looked very good. And he didn't look very good against Korea either. However, in a 3-4-3, when you have a two-man central midfield, what you're asking out of them is substantially different than when you're playing a three-man midfield. It is substantially different. It's different players. You cannot put a creative player next to Tyler Adams in that setup. I don't even think you can put Weston McKennie next to Tyler Adams in the setup. And I'm worried about what this formation means for McKennie's spot in the team going forward. However, for this game, it's fine. Roldan is a placeholder. I think Poch needs to find. I loved the formation. I thought it was great. More defensive solidity. I think he needs to find that partner to Adams. I have some names I think it should be. There's two of them. Aiden Morris or Tanner Tessman. I think those are the two names. He said he picked this squad based on form, and I know we're going to talk about Poch later, but those were players who were playing well to start the season and getting minutes for legitimate teams. Players disappointed not to see in the pool. But reacting to the game, I thought the attack looked very, very free-flowing. Balogun's really good. I didn't forget. I just needed to remember. I was really, really excited. This is weird optimism, and I know Japan didn't play their best players. They did bring on some of them in the second half. Let's talk about the team. Let's talk about the shape. You support a 3-4-3. I support a 3-4-3. Why wasn't this happening sooner? Again, there's still plenty of time to the World Cup, but it just feels weird that he waited till September to roll this out. I guess he's experimenting. I don't know.
Well, we've seen that. I mean, the lineups are different. The formation changed. He's been constantly putting players in and out of rosters and team selections. It is a process, which I think is something that he said, and we'll get onto later. But, everyone's expecting big success and, we have to be winning now. Otherwise, we're not going to be winning at the World Cup, which is a fair concern. But, you'd rather experiment and get it right at some point rather than, maybe. I just think it is a process thing. But I really like your Aiden Morris shout, by the way. I think Tyler Adams is a lock. Aiden Morris is looking really, really good for Middlesbrough. And yeah, I think you need a bit of a solid player in midfield like that. And Balogun, by the way, I believe that was his first goal since the 2-1 loss to Panama at Copa America. So first goal in over a year. I like the shape. I really like how it works. It's a difficult formation to play. But if anyone's going to be able to coach it, it is Poch for all of the criticism he's had. And the players do seem invested in him and his system. So hopefully it's something we see moving forward. He finds that midfield partner and, more of the regular starters come in to see how that formation will work with the best team. And I think it's going to be good.
Let's talk about the team itself. So the back three consisted of Tim Ream, Chris Richards, and Tristan Blackman. Tristan Blackman was badly caught out by Heung-min Son on the first goal. I couldn't tell if he was trying to play the offside trap or not. He was on. Son scored. Tim Ream then looked a little slow-footed on South Korea's second goal. You're asking him to defend more centrally in that when it was a back four. So it would be a little different in the 3-4-3 in that same situation. Chris Richards plays in a back three for Crystal Palace. So that's obviously a good sign. He didn't play in the first game. Pochettino said, we can't just play Chris Richards every game. It's a process. We don't get hurt. I agree. He's played a lot of minutes so far for Palace. I would like to see Chris Richards, Ream. I don't know if it's Blackman. Maybe I'd like to see a player like Joe Scally in there, who's like a wing, who's a left back, right back, who can then drop into it as the one player like that. Dest and Robinson should be the starters at wing back. What's your take? Who do you want filling out this back line after seeing these last two games?
Yeah, no, I agree with Robinson and Dest 100%. I think it's really positive to see Arsenal playing the way he is. If Robinson, his fitness has always been a concern. So even if it's a case of, him coming on 60th, 70th minute, maybe that's fine. It looks like you can trust him now. Chris Richards, I think, is incredible. Has to play. Same as Tyler Adams, that's his spot. Tim Ream is old, but he's experienced. And like you said, having that three back gives him a little bit more of a comfort, even though it can be daunting. There is definitely a fight for that other spot, if that is the way that they're going to go now. So it's tough. I mean, you've already named the main candidates there. But I think Chris Richards is the one that Midfield I liked as well. As I said, we need to find that other partner for Adams, but the wing backs I think are going to be really, really strong and influential in this team. And there's so much going forward that I think there's not really too much to worry about there. It is further back.
I think we gave Poch a lot of stick for this experimental sort of squad, but I think he does need to experiment with the forward line. I think he does need to experiment in a lot of positions. It is still September. Joe, I mentioned to you in the office yesterday, the head coach for the Moroccan national team, Ragrouziri, excuse my pronunciation, he got less than 3 months, and look what he built. And Poch has this time to experiment. I'm going to give one quote where he said on team selection, when there was a lot of pushback to the announcements, he said, quote, "This is the last opportunity to bring some new faces that we didn't have a possibility to bring in the past." Okay. We saw some players. We saw Balogun. We hadn't seen him in a while, and he looked great. Okay. Arfston and Robinson, Freeman, we now have a sample of how they play. Great. We know who Anthony Robinson is. We know who Serginho Dest is, who came off the bench, looked pretty good. Now we have these back information on these backup fullbacks. Okay, so now we're starting to create a picture of what we'd imagine the team look like. Now we have a formation we think we'd like. These are all good steps. Next camp, I want to see a little more playing around with these names that we've mentioned, who we're disappointed weren't on this team, and see now how they fit in. We still got a bunch of camps to go. This isn't April we're talking about. It's still September. So that's where some of my optimism lies.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 more international breaks that have been finalised, and we're going to get into this later, but there's a potential one for March, which could be quite exciting. The next international break will be a mixture of tests, but I think it's good. You just keep this positivity going. It's not been an easy ride so far. He's had a lot to deal with as well. I mean, the fallout from Berhalter, him coming in, and then, a lack of results and not winning the trophies that the US have been kind of used to winning. I don't know if it's an entitlement thing, but it's not worked out. And obviously the Pulisic saga and the pressure of the home World Cup. There's so much going on. But, you'd like to think that this is a big win. I mean, he hasn't had a great record against kind of top-ranked teams. I think this is only his second win over a team that's ranked inside the top 30. But this was, in my opinion, the best performance under Pochettino for the US by a mile, really, actually. And having that as obviously the most recent game can be nothing but positive.
So Poch in?
Of course. Has to be. You can't. I think it might be different if it wasn't a home World Cup, but with so much to prepare for that, I just think the decision would do more harm than good.
Yeah, the optics of firing your coach now would be insane. Also, Poch would probably urge us, if he was here, he would say, "Why are you overreacting to one result? I don't even care about the result. I care about." He said that. He said he really does not care about the results. All he cares about is the performance, especially in these friendlies, which is the correct way of looking at things. However, you do need a little bit of optimism, in my opinion. Everyone needs a little bit of optimism. I'm happy they won the second game as opposed to the first. So now you can kind of ride that high into the next international break. But yeah, you have to keep. He's making $6 million a year. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you can't. This isn't like Chelsea, who's just like you can pay a coach to disappear. You need to pay him, and they need to keep him happy as a coach. I'm Poch too.
Yeah, and also I just think, there's obviously been some great coaches in US history. This is one of the most high profile, one of the most respected for what he's done. Sure, it hasn't been, the flying dominant start that everyone was hoping for, but I think you've got to have a bit of context and step back sometimes. And I think making a very rash decision could be really costly and something that you regret further down the line. Ultimately, if this gamble doesn't pay off, then so be it. But for now, you've got to be locked in and completely trust the reason that you brought him in so recently, really.
If you sack Pochettino before the World Cup, the U.S. will never hire a marquee international manager again because no one will want to take that job. If you were promised a pre-World Cup cycle and the World Cup itself on a hefty salary and you can't even make it there and results haven't been like, dire. I mean, they've been bad, but they haven't been dire. These floated dream in the past of someone like Pep Guardiola coming in and coaching the U.S. will never happen because Pep demands time. So I think procedurally, from a procedure point of view, you need to maintain Mauricio Pochettino going forward. Let's quickly talk about his squad. Obviously, we kind of got into that last bit. There's some names we're disappointed were in the door. He said he picked the team mostly based on form, and also obviously giving some players who weren't previously with the squad a chance to bet in. Is there anyone you need to see in the next window who wasn't here in this window?
I think Johnny Cardozo has to be in there. I just want to see him. He's still kind of a recent addition, even though he's so talented. I just want to see him more, see him gel with the players around him, become a kind of focal point in that team if he can. I think he's got the ability to do so. And it can't always be Pulisic. I mean, I said earlier, he lifted the whole team around him in that Japan game, and he was great to watch. But as much as he is the Captain America and all the rest of it, he can't always be the one doing the heavy lifting. He needs some help. So he's one that I really want to see. I'd like to see Robinson back in if he's fit, but just because, it's also great for Arsenal to get minutes. But I just want, he's going to continue experimenting. There's still multiple international windows before the preparations really begin. But I just want to see the best players in there, fighting out for those spots and laying down a marker, basically.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm most interested in two positions. I'm interested in central midfield, and I'm interested more so than at striker, now in the right wing spot. Zendejas started. Zendejas has been one of the best players in Liga MX for a few years now. Is he part of the picture? There's some other forwards who didn't get in. Haji Wright can play on the wing. He has played on the wing for Coventry City a bunch. Do you move one of these attacking midfielders like Malik Tillman or Gio Reyna onto the wing? I think Malik Tillman's going to play a big part to play for the World Cup, whether it be starting or off the bench. He is going to get minutes. And the other most interesting position, central midfield, Christian Roldan, better not be the starter at the World Cup. Is it going to be a name like Morris? Is it going to be a name like Johnny Cardoza? Thank you for bringing him up. Is it going to be a name like Weston McKennie, who I don't think makes a ton of sense in a midfield too? Maybe you get creative and play him at right wing. I actually don't hate that. He's played literally every position for Juventus. High energy player, very fun. I don't know. So those are the two positions I'm most interested to seeing going forward. Also, shout out Luca De La Torre, who came off the bench. He's been part of this team in years past. Another interesting option. Just want to see Pochettino give some minutes to some of these players because he said he's experimenting. So you better experiment with the most talented players, not just players you like for whatever reason.
Yeah, and quick shout out as well, you just said about midfielders. Aidan Morris, I want to see him in the squad more. I think he's a player that's got a bright future. And I'm not just saying that with the English bias because he's playing well for Middlesbrough and I see him a lot more often, but I think he's got, levels to go up.
Yeah, and he should not get penalized for challenging himself at an upper level championship club. He should not. That's a good move. That's a team that looks like they're going to be in the promotion race. And it shouldn't be he only gets called up if they're promoted or not either. He looks like he's one of the best players, one of the best midfielders in a very competitive league. And again, we don't hate the MLS. We like the MLS. But players should get rewarded for challenging themselves when it goes well. Hey, if you want to get involved in the conversation, shoot us an email at alloutfootball@reachplc.com or me personally at jeremy.goldstein@reachplc.com. Please engage by subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. That's the end of part 1 of this week's All Out Soccer, but stick around for part 2 just after the break. We're back. Part 2. These are the 2 games of this window, but Joe, we have a bunch more scheduled for the next few international breaks.
Yeah, between October 10th and 14th, the US has games scheduled against Ecuador and Argentina, Australia. The reason I say Argentina is Ecuador got a 1-0 win over Argentina last night. Chaotic game with 2 red cards, and Valencia always scores. That's going to be a tough test. Ecuador are a really, really good team, and I think a good test for America that as well. Australia, maybe not seen as the best nation, so you'd hope that'll be a win as well. But again, a good test against 2 very, very different teams. Following that in November, between November 15th and 18th, there's games scheduled against Paraguay and Uruguay. So a nice South American test there. Uruguay, obviously a top nation, no longer with Suarez anymore. So slightly different, but they still got bags of talent. Valverde from Real Madrid is an exceptional midfielder. He'd be quite good alongside Tyler Adams in midfield. And following that, there is talks for a very big window in March. There's been discussions recently with Portugal, maybe even Belgium, coming to play at Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Arena, which they'd fill if Ronaldo is there. We were talking about this in the office yesterday as well. That would be amazing in terms of really testing yourself against 2 big European nations. But also potentially damaging? What do you think if they play them and Ronaldo comes over?
Just to talk about the teams first, besides any
Sorry,
player, I think this is a nice eclectic balance of teams of skill levels who are all World Cup teams, by the way, who the U.S. may see either in a group stage, a round of 16, a team like Portugal, Belgium in a quarterfinal if they were to get there. And that's exactly who the U.S. needs to be playing. They don't need to be like, we're done with CONCACAF games. We're playing a mix of teams from around the world with completely different profiles and play styles. Obviously, a team like Japan looks a lot different than Ecuador for a number of reasons. The style they play, obviously, South American football a little more turgid versus a team like Portugal is going to be a little more disciplined in certain elements. So I think I'm happy to see this mix of teams with a mix of talent, mix of experience. Great for the U.S. to get exposure to teams from all different parts of the world. For Portugal specifically, Cristiano Ronaldo has not been in the United States for a long time, and legally, I'm not going to talk about why, but he has not been. Read between the lines there. If he were to play here, he would be bigger than the game. It would be about Ronaldo playing in the United States. And this is something Pochettino talked about post-game the other day when the game against Korea seemed more about Heung-min Son and Korea playing against the U.S. than the U.S. hosting Korea for a friendly based on the crowd. If you have Cristiano Ronaldo at a game, it is going to be about Cristiano Ronaldo. It is going to be about young American fans watching Cristiano Ronaldo. And then the U.S. soccer is a byproduct as a result. If the U.S. gets smoked in that game 3 or 4-0, it's going to be like, oh, look at this U.S. punching bag. Like, oh, we're just entertaining the world's best. And the U.S. then team itself has no intrinsic value except as kind of a entrance point for liaisoning matchups against the best teams in the world. You want the U.S. team to matter and be consequential in that matchup. And I'm not sure if they will be. Portugal are really, really good. And Ronaldo has a very, very big following. And I'm a little nervous about that game just becoming a totally, totally just Ronaldo fest as opposed to meaning anything about the U.S. team at all.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. As you said, the last time he played, I think it was for Real Madrid in 2014 in a preseason friendly in Michigan or wherever it was, in one of those huge bowl stadiums, which Poch actually said he wants to play in more. I think it's good as a challenge. I think on the preface, it's good to have 80,000 fans pile in 3 months before the World Cup and kind of get that soccer feeling, get that excitement for it, etc. But yeah, you are right. He will be obviously the poster boy for the game and will be a large reason as to why that stadium sells out. Slightly ironic, obviously, the reports coming out following Son, like you said, but I do think it's slightly different than that one. The South Korea game was at Sports Illustrated Stadium, formerly known as Red Bull Arena, which is about 20,000. And yeah, there were around 10,000 fans cheering for Son and Korea there, which was unfortunate at a time where the US team is really looking for momentum and for fans to support and for the team to perform. But I think 3 months out from the World Cup, testing yourself against a probable, round of 16, maybe quarterfinal opponent is good. Sure, it'll be about Ronaldo, but I just think at that time it might raise the excitement levels at a really key time before the tournament begins.
Yeah. I think that's another fair counterpoint is you just want energy. You want conversation about it. If the U.S. were to get a win in that game, it would be massive, massive. And I think it's a risk you have to take. In terms of location, obviously the game against Korea was in Jersey. Then for Japan, I was pleased to see it move to Columbus. I don't have a lot of great things to say about Columbus, except it has been historically a U.S. men's national team stronghold. So has most of Ohio, interestingly enough, Cincinnati's soccer-loving city. It's good to see the U.S. lean into those markets where they know they have their strength, because obviously the World Cup games are going to be at the glitziest venues, coastal elites ruining everything type of vibe. You can't rely on the Midwest. So you get also interesting to see this game against Portugal, likely to be in Atlanta. Again, diversifying our portfolio, getting players exposed to different environments against different size teams. I'm all for it. The bigger thing for me is just seeing when you are playing these big international teams by come March, it cannot just be an experimental side of Christian Roldan still in the team. It has to be the most talented team in a formation that you think you're going to play at the World Cup. So you're actually in those final stages. That's just the biggest thing is I want to see real U.S. men's national teams, not experiments in those big games.
Yeah, I agree. And if the reports are also true that they're going to play Belgium, I think it would be smart to maybe do that second. Belgium are a great team, can beat anyone on their day, but they're not as good as they used to be. The golden generation has passed. Sure, they've still got Courtois and De Bruyne still involved, and Lukaku, big stars. But at the last World Cup, Canada almost beat Belgium. They probably should have beaten Belgium. The US definitely has a chance in that game. So if they put that one second, not writing off the Portugal game, but Portugal are one of the best teams in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If that doesn't go too well and they can follow up with maybe a really good performance against Belgium, it might be ideal as well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting mix, and I totally agree with you about Belgium. We're going to move domestically just for one little bit because we have some Luis Suarez news. Again, even when he's not on the international team, he still is a man to grab headlines. Suarez, for his incident against Seattle in Miami's 3-0 Leagues Cup loss, in addition to earning a 6-match ban in the Leagues Cup, that's a Leagues Cup specific ban, the MLS came down with a 3-game ban for him additionally. So he will miss a September 13th fixture against Charlotte, the 16th against Seattle, ironically, and September 20th against DC United. There was a couple other suspensions handing out to coaches. There's other suspensions handing out to players like Busquets in the Leagues Cup. Overall, as a whole, Joe, is this the correct decision? I'm happy we don't have to talk about this anymore. This is the last time. Spitgate is dead, or Spitgate is alive as long as he's going through these three games he's missing.
Definitely the right decision. You can't do that. I mean, it's outrageous. It's definitely, Spitgate at the moment. Jalen Carter obviously got inspired in the NFL the other night. But you can't be doing that. And I think it's hard to say what a fair ban is because it shows how either you rate spitting or how disgraceful we think it is or whatever, but it's not that. 3 games is a fair ban. Weirdly enough, because Miami is so far behind in terms of they have so many games in hand on other opponents, those 3 games are just within a week, like you said. So he's only going to be out of action for a week, which doesn't seem like that long. Definitely the correct decision, but I think quite ironically, it might actually benefit him. Maybe not Miami with him being out, but he's played a lot of minutes. He's not getting any younger. I think him having a little bit of a rest and coming back at this point in the season before the playoffs begin might actually be all right. Obviously, a ban aside in terms of a fitness level.
Yeah, if you played him in 3 games in a week, that would not be a wise idea. It's just they need bodies for that many games in quick time, especially because it's an older squad. And just even having him start in one of them would be very useful. I know we're going to talk about Fafa Picol as an option, but I think they just need a lot of bodies. And I just think because of how you can't play Messi, I don't think a full 90 in all 3 of these games. It's going to affect them just from a points point of view. Just they're going to drop at least 2 more points than they would have because of this Suarez ban.
Yeah, and I mean, at the moment, I think they're 4 games behind most of the teams in and around them. If they win their games in hand and continue the form that they have shown, they'll top the conference. Little harder now with so many games quick fire now coming thick and fast. It's going to be hard to keep that up, and especially losing players' bodies. I think it's a big chance for Fafa Picol to step up. I think, ironically, after forcing through an exit because of not playing enough, it would have been a good opportunity for Benjamin Kramashi to play. Yeah. But he is no longer an option. So up to Mascherano now to see who he thinks deserves the time and maybe lean on some of the younger guys that he's impressed with.
Here's a question I was really proud of. Do you think there's a chance that Jalen Carter saw the video of Suarez spitting? And do you think that factored that thought even crossed his mind a little bit? Like, do you think there's any chance those 2 worlds are connected? Or is that just me dreaming?
I think he might have seen the incident. It was very viral in the US sports scene for obvious reasons. I don't think when he was being taunted by Dak Prescott, it went in his mind, I'm going to copy Luis Suarez. But you never know. You might have to ask him if you can at some point.
Not intentionally. I'm saying not intentionally. I'm saying subconsciously. He was like, "Oh, spitting is a form of taunting." Oh, my, like he didn't. It's now on the table. It was previously off the table, but because I've seen this player I've heard of do it, I can do it. And that, like, he didn't actually verbalize that in his head, but subconsciously that exact thought process occurred. That's
subconsciously, Luis Suarez has began a spitting epidemic for the next season, is what you're saying.
He's rent-free in everyone's heads at all times, just like he always has been.
Including ours, absolutely.
And Joe, very, very quickly before I let you go, one little bit of political news. Just wanted to shoehorn in. I don't know if you followed, we didn't discuss this at all, about the recent news about dynamic pricing at the World Cup. Pre-sale tickets are on sale today. Starting at $60 is the lowest. FIFA are implementing dynamic pricing, which means tickets can fluctuate based on a series of metrics that will not become public, kind of in the way they do for concerts in America. Welcome to America, baby. 2026 World Cup. Some tickets are going to be like $7,000. And that's crazy. New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani is pushing the Game Over Greed petition to eliminate dynamic pricing and also allocate 15% of tickets for New York City residents for the games at MetLife, which is great, which happens at almost every international tournament, but FIFA is scrapped for the 2026 World Cup. Question for you, how much do you think FIFA expects to make in ticket revenue over the course of the tournament?
I couldn't even make an educated guess. I mean, it's going to be they've made loads on just the pre-sale that they've been doing. So
this is not just ticket revenue. This is revenue entirely.
For the whole World Cup?
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions. Have you got a figure?
Yes. Oh, no, this is just for ticketing. I wrote this number down. And I was like, wait a minute, that can't be true. And then I looked it up, and then it is true. Oh, my God. This is insane.
How many millions?
FIFA expects to make $3 billion from just hospitality and ticket sales.
Wow. Okay. Jeez, I was in the wrong ballpark there.
Wait. I thought that was for all revenue. Just for hospitality and tickets?
This just like, firstly, not to get too political, I thought Donald Trump signed an order about dynamic pricing to try and assist sports games and tickets and concerts. No, apparently that hasn't happened. But also just the whole US soccer have been crying out for authentic, passionate fans that you see in Europe and other places. The only way that you can have that is by facilitating the games and allowing real fans, passionate fans, working class people to come through their gates and show their support. If you price them out and you cater and try and funnel a large proportion of your tickets to a certain demographic, they're not going to have that. And it's a shame. And of course, they're going to make money, and that's something they're trying to do, and that's great. And for those people that can afford those hospitality suites, they're going to have an unbelievable experience, probably the best World Cup experience you'll have. But it's just a shame that the rest of the people are being priced out, and I think that will show in some of the support and the crowds at the tournament. But it's their decision. They want one thing. You can't have one thing without compromising on another.
And I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but those people enjoying those hospitality suites are what something E from Entourage is called, and that is a suit. These are people who are not fans. This is all corporate suit situations going on in those suites. Again, I don't want to be naive and pretend this doesn't happen everywhere in the world. Like, this is how things work. Like, I'm not, pretending that doesn't exist. It's just disappointing for the World Cup on U.S. soil, where it could really just be this explosion of melting pots of culture all over the world, blah, blah, blah. And instead, it's just going to be a corporate greed fest. But hopefully, we see change to dynamic pricing. It is going to in effect today, but I just don't want to see anyone paying $7,000 for a ticket in Zone 3. They've also got rid of categories for stuff. It's now gone to like the U.S. section. If you would apply for any tournament in FIFA or UEFA historically, category 1, 2, and 3, not like this for this World Cup. They're doing it based on exactly where you're sitting, so they can charge you even more money. We could talk about this for a long time. Let's cut it off while we're strong. Keep listening to hear Joe talk with Brad Friedel, who has things to say about the U.S.
Did you see any of the 2-0 win last night against Japan?
Yeah, I watched the game.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. I know Mauricio well. I know the staff well. I know results wise things haven't been going that well in a lot of the supporters' minds and a lot of the pundits' minds in America. I've been reading some of that, but what I know from Mauricio, he's one of the very best in the game at what he does. He's a tireless worker, and I imagine he's having to look at as many players as possible, as many games as possible, so he can get a collective group of players together that will work under his tactics and his sort of moral strategies off the field to have a cohesive group. So, I have no doubt in my mind that come the World Cup, Mauricio will have an incredibly competitive team out on the field. I'm in a little bit of a luxury position because I know him so well, and worked under him, and also did my pro license with one of his staff members. And I was old. That was my last year. I was 43 years of age and 44 when I was playing under him. But I was doing more work in the academy with and the first team, and I got to spend quite a bit of time with him. So I know people that don't know him may, if the results haven't gone well, might question things, but I don't question it at all. And I think come the end, when they step on the field in 2026, the team will be as good as our team can be.
Well, he said that actually. It was after the Korea result, which was obviously underwhelming. He just said, we're going to be ready once the World Cup starts, which I think any fan, that's the priority anyway. Do you think the criticism's been a bit unfair of Pochettino just because there's been so much going on?
I've lived in countries, worked in countries, played in countries where the media is over the top. I mean, in Turkey, the social media is relentless. It is what it is. That's the way with social media today and the smartphone, a lot of people become journalists overnight. And as you probably know, and they're not journalists. It's easy to get your opinion out somewhere, even when you don't have any basis for the opinion other than the result. I've seen a lot of people talking, bringing up youth development again, and it's like youth development has nothing to do with Mauricio Pochettino and the U.S. national team. His job right now is to try to find the best collective group of players to perform in a World Cup. I think criticism in football works two ways. When you criticize, and there are a lot of people that do too early, then you look a bit silly in the end when things go well. And I'd say more times than not, they do turn around a little bit. I think I always sort of live by the mantra: you're never as bad as you think you are, and you're never as good as you think you are. You're usually somewhere in the middle. And it's like when you play a game, just because you've in that game, you've probably played about the same as you always do, but maybe you scored a goal, so they give you a 9 out of 10. And if they give you a 5 out of 10, maybe you played about the same as you always do, but you missed 2 chances. So it's usually somewhere in the middle. So the criticism, I don't know. Some people will genuinely be nervous for the team. I know Alexi Lalas really well. He is really passionate about the U.S. He is. He is, and he has. He'll go with emotions on wins and losses, but he actually wants the team to do really well. He doesn't go personal at anybody for any reason whatsoever, other than he just gets frustrated. So the criticism's all different. Some people criticize to hear their own voice, but Lexi's a really good guy. He will just want the team to do well. What I would probably say about anyone criticizing Mauricio at this stage is, kind of be careful. It's not a warning. It's not going to do anything. But I think you might eat your words a little bit if you if you go too negative on him right now. He is one of the very best out there, and in my opinion, he will get things right.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally. I think people are way too reactionary nowadays. You know, a moment can happen, whereas back in the day, you wouldn't speak about it until, you know, the next morning, or you kind of have that sleep on it, and the result turns around. But at the time, it's just all hell breaks loose. So, yeah.
Well, I would say when the players were snapping back at the pundits over this past month or so. So I did an interview and somebody asked me what I thought. And I was like, well, I said, it's difficult for me to know what the players are feeling because they have to deal with one element of footballing life that I never had to deal with, or I did at the very, very end of my career. But by then I had already gained a reputation. So it wasn't an issue. What is social media today? Like I played with a lot of players with the U.S. national team that couldn't have dealt with social media the way it is today. So like straight away, if one of us or myself or whatever made a mistake on a Saturday, let's say when I was at Liverpool, then it would be on Match of the Day at night, maybe on the Sky Sports News loop the next day. But then on Monday, it's gone. It's over. And that mistake is between you, your teammates, and your coaching staff. That's it. And the people that were in the stadium knew about it, but legitimately billions around the world didn't know about it. Nowadays, within 30 seconds, a minute of somebody making a mistake, it's viral. Yeah. And the players have to deal with that added bit of pressure. And not every human being is built to deal with that type of pressure. So people will react in different ways. I think, before people really start to jump in and criticize why people are acting certain ways and stuff like that, they should understand that changes probably come in each, maybe decade is about right, but sometimes a little bit sooner. And these players have to deal with things that we never dealt with. We had to deal with some things that they never dealt with either, but generally it's much different today, especially on the media front. So give them a little bit of a break. Give them a little bit of leeway. Not everyone's going to deal with pressure in the perfect way.